As Brian McMillan is picking up our team coverage now. He joins us live with some tips on how you can stay safe over the next few days. And Brian, you and I talked about this on the air before the last heat wave. Just the idea that people need to not assume that those of us who may have mobility problems, right, senior citizens, people in the neighborhood, that somebody is checking on them, that your brother, your sister is checking on them. All of us need to triple check. Right?
Exactly. And those neighbors, maybe even an elderly neighbor that you don't talk to very often, just go knock on the door, go check on them here during this kind of heat, because it is dangerous when it gets over 100 and then those nights are still above 70 degrees and you just don't get much relief from the heat. If you're planning on heading to some of our local waterways, of course, be wearing a life jacket when you're out on the water. And as far as pets go, a lot of people have asked us, how do I know if the ground is okay for pets? Well, here's a simple little trick. Just put your hand down on the blacktop. Feel it. If you can't leave it there for more than a couple seconds, actually, that's really hot. So I would say, you know what, right now in the heat of the day, probably not a good idea. It's 135 degrees here radiating off of that blacktop. And then, of course, do not leave your kids, do not leave your pets in the car. We do these stories every single year when it gets hot like this, because temperatures inside the car can get ridiculously hot. And here's a look at just how hot your car can get after even just a few minutes. If it's 95 degrees outside, it can get up to 114 in just 10 minutes and up to 140 degrees in just an hour. And if the temperature hits 100, your car can get up to more than 170 degrees. Over the next few days, doctors say it's really important to drink lots of water, and they say dehydration increases your risk of a heat injury. Here's some signs that you'll want to look for.
You'll have some increased vasodilation to the surface of your body, which will show up as either mild swelling or some rashes or some itchiness on the skin. You might even notice some small blotches, red spots on the skin. And that's just your blood vessels opening up a little bit because they're overexposed to heat.
If you notice any of that, you'll want to find somewhere cool as soon as possible. They say it may be more severe if you start to feel disoriented or confused. And if things get worse, it is definitely time to find a way to cool off. Now, it's important to keep an eye on children and on the elderly, of course, during times like these. Kids like to play outside and everything. Make sure they are getting all the water, all the fluids they need, and the break from the heat. If you or if somebody you know needs a way to cool off, dial 211, and they have some resources for you there. Reporting live in Beaverton, Brian McMillan, Fox 12 Oregon.